This is the $100 billion Button, a series on the science of money and well-being. It is produced by Sycamore, an app to learn and practice well-being. Visit us at trysycamore.com. Welcome back to our series on money and well-being. As we discussed last episode, money has value because it is a medium of exchange, something that can be traded for other things that actually do something for us. We can use it to buy a toaster, or a pair of shoes, or a car wash, or bread, or a bottle of champagne, or a trip to Ecuador, or a course credit at a local college, or a signed Taylor Swift poster. You get it. We also discussed that when it comes to the relationship between money and well-being, there is likely some benefit to simply having the money, whether by providing a feeling of financial security, representing professional accomplishments, or conferring social status. These have a more direct connection to our evaluative well-being or our life satisfaction. When it comes to our experience well-being, our happiness, it's more about how we spend the money. And when it comes to spending money, all purchases are not created equal. This episode will hopefully hammer home the idea that money is truly only as good as our ability to spend it well. It's really easy and tempting to spend money quickly and poorly, with minimal benefit to our happiness. It's harder, and at times counterintuitive, to spend money in ways that maximize its impact on our happiness. Let's dive in. The first distinction we'll make is between buying things and buying experiences. Things like a new hat or a painting. Experiences like a cooking lesson or a concert ticket. And when it comes to our well-being, buying experiences appears to provide more bang for your buck. Let's talk about things first. Up to a certain point, we really need things. If the amount of money you have is sufficiently low, it's conceivable that you're almost exclusively spending on things in the form of basic necessities, like water, and food, and shelter, and electricity, and medications. These purchases are the most essential things you can buy with your money, since without these things, your life, health, and safety are all at risk. People who lack such basic necessities experience unambiguously low levels of well-being. And when they are suddenly able to afford these necessities, their experienced well-being improves. This effect is visible in the research. At low levels of income, the effects of more money on happiness are unambiguously positive. However, evidence suggests that the benefit of more things starts to rapidly diminish after you are able to afford the necessities of your life. The reason for this ties back to a pair of concepts we've already discussed in a previous episode. The first is the idea of diminishing marginal returns. The more of something you already have, the less an extra unit of that thing will benefit your well-being. The first liter of drinking water you are able to afford today is literally life-saving. The second is essential. The third is nice. But the 10th? That's way more water than you need for the day. It works this way for everything, and it also applies to the quality of each thing. Take your home. As you have more money, you can afford more home. That is to say, more square footage, more bedrooms, more bathrooms, more yard space. You also can afford better quality homes. A home that is in good repair, with new appliances, with minimal street noise, maybe even a pool. But even this starts to level off quite quickly. You can only have a home that is so quiet, with so many rooms that you actually use, with so many appliances. Is having 15 acres of backyard 15 times better than having 1 acre? And that pool you swim in for only a few weeks a year suddenly requires all this upkeep. The second concept that is relevant here is that of hedonic adaptation. If you recall from a prior episode, our brains are programmed to quickly adjust to changes in our life, because it is more evolutionarily adaptive for us to concentrate on the things that are actively changing around us. And our brains adjust most quickly to new things, since they are literally static. They are just objects. They stick around. We see them every day. We get used to them. Do you remember what it was like to use your smartphone for the first time? It was awesome, and those initial moments are indeed good. But by now, it's just another thing. Whatever happiness it brought you to unbox it and play around with it for the first few days quickly vanishes. These days, it's just your phone. And worst of all, things actually get worse over time. Your phone battery is not as good as it once was. Your new house develops a leak. Your jacket tears. Your car gets a scratch. Your jeans get a stain and start to go out of style. In fact, every single thing that you own was once something new that you craved and saved for and bought and unpackaged. Now, they're simply possessions. Now let's contrast this with experiences. Experiences are the opposite of things. They are far from static. By definition, they are fleeting. They last only the duration of an evening or a weekend or a vacation. An experience is a time-bound part of your life that disappears, leaving a memory and a feeling. A trip to the aquarium, dinner with a friend, a walk at a local nature preserve, skydiving, a week in Lake Placid, or Lagos. Due to these differences, experiences have a different effect on our well-being than things. Experiences are more resistant to the effects of diminishing marginal returns, since experiences are not countable or interchangeable in the same way as things are. If you have 10 dinners with a friend, each is slightly different than the last. Different conversations, moods, foods. Each one is fleeting, lasting only a couple of hours. It's conceivable that 10 dinners with a friend is actually 10 times better than one, assuming they're a bit spaced out. In fact, they might even get better over time, since your friendship will presumably grow stronger. Experiences are also more resistant to the effects of hedonic adaptation. Because they are such limited, fleeting parts of your life, it's much harder to get used to them. They don't stick around in a corner, gathering dust. They also don't wear out or break down over time. They're in your life for a flash, and then pass. Leading research backs up the suggestion that experiences are more likely to improve your well-being than things. A 2003 study asked participants to consider past purchases they've made on both experiences and things costing over $100, then measured their happiness. Participants were significantly happier thinking about experiential purchases than material purchases. They also judged experiences as contributing more to their overall happiness and regarded their money as better spent on the experience. A parallel experiment from 2014 had people think ahead to planned purchases in the future, and found that, similarly, thinking about future experiences provided more happiness than thinking about future things. Seems like a clean sweep. Surprisingly, our predictions of how things versus experiences will make us feel don't line up with this reality. Another 2014 study asked people to predict how they would feel prior to an upcoming purchase, then surveyed them after the purchase was made. The post-purchase evaluation was the same. Experiences provided more happiness than things. But their pre-purchase prediction was the opposite. They thought, incorrectly, that buying a thing would be better than an experience. Why does this occur? Why are our instincts wrong here? Well, part of the answer is that things are really tempting to buy. So much so that we constantly convince ourselves that they'll provide more well-being than they actually do. Much of this stems from our consumer culture and the marketing messaging that we are inundated with in our daily lives. Every part of our consumer culture reinforces the idea that we really do need that new 10-function kitchen appliance, or lip gloss, or ultra-thin wallet. There are legions of marketers whose entire job is to make you quite literally believe you're missing out by not owning every single product on the shelf. Because if they succeed in convincing you of this, they're in business. And as a result, they're really freaking good at their job. They know how to package items and what colors to use to psychologically prime you. They know what beautiful, smiling person to put in the advertisement to make you want to associate with. They know where to place it in the store so that it's tempting at just the right moment. They know how to run discounts to make you feel like you're getting a deal. All this is really convincing in the moment. You try on that new shirt, you feel fantastic, you imagine wearing it everywhere, you imagine being seen in it. I will look exactly like that fake, airbrushed model in the ad, you think to yourself. You will embody whatever the brand stands for, being adventurous, or sexy, or refined, or hip. Except whatever boost you get quickly dissipates thanks to hedonic adaptation, one of our biggest cognitive blind spots. It's important to realize how consumer culture also readily ties into our concepts of group belonging, class, and status. Often we buy things because, consciously or not, we want to associate with and fit into a specific group. This is a natural desire for humans. We want to feel like we belong socially. And we pick up on these associations really quickly. A Ralph Lauren polo suggests affiliation with a different group than a Star Wars hoodie, while a Toyota suggests affiliation with a different group than a Ferrari. Social class is often interwoven into these things. How many billionaires shop at the dollar store? And how many people making minimum wage shop at Chanel? When you imagine someone wearing an Yves Saint Laurent dress, you probably imagine someone quite wealthy. Contrast that with someone wearing a shirt from Old Navy. The things we purchase signal to others many things, and one of them is how much money we have. There is a term for spending money on things with the specific purpose of displaying your wealth, and that's conspicuous consumption. Wearing designer clothes and driving luxury cars are easy examples. Things that fall into this category are called Veblen goods, named after the economist Thorstein Veblen. Veblen goods are those things for which consumer demand increases as the price increases. In other words, these are status symbols. They're attractive because they're expensive, and therefore exclusive. When we see someone with something obviously expensive and exclusive, like a luxury watch, we want it. The fact that it is often out of reach makes it seem alluring, and we are tricked into thinking it must be really awesome to own that thing. But the irony is that for that person, they quickly get used to whatever it is, and can always look around at someone who has an even nicer watch and envy it. They fall prey to the exact same mistake. The cycle of buying things never ends either. You will never have it all. One of the many problems of conspicuous consumption is that less wealthy people try to copy it. The whole business of counterfeits is built on this premise. You can buy counterfeit Louis Vuitton bags, counterfeit Gucci sneakers, and counterfeit Rolex watches for very cheap. And they are often very convincing fakes. But for the hyper-wealthy trying to signal their class, this is a problem because suddenly it's hard to tell who can afford the real Rolex. The game thus becomes needing to constantly pick up new brands and trends and styles that signal your wealth and move on before it's copied and counterfeited. This is the idea behind the idiom keeping up with the Joneses, where you are always a purchase behind your neighbors. All of this becomes a never-ending cycle where everyone's spending money on the latest thing, none of which bring any durable happiness. Unfortunately, the more people fall into this cycle, the worse their well-being seems to fare. A pair of observational studies, one from 1992 and the other from 2003, looked at how materialism, the tendency to prize physical possessions, relates to evaluative well-being. In both studies, the correlation between materialism and life satisfaction was negative, which is to say that the more materialistic you are, the lower life satisfaction you are likely to have on average. While this is not a causal conclusion, the relationship aligns with our understanding of how much acquiring more stuff can really do for you. One of the possible mechanisms behind why things and experiences don't provide the same benefits to well-being is the focus on self versus others. Buying things are typically about you, your shoes, your car, your room decor. It's very inwardly focused and often very self-image focused. You want to appear in the world as some improved version of yourself. Such self-centered behavior and mindsets typically translate poorly to well-being. In contrast, experiences are typically about others. We tend to go out and do things with other people, visiting the zoo, having a meal, playing basketball. Even if you do something by yourself, you're not usually the center of that activity. And things that foster social connection and provide opportunities to step outside yourself typically translate to improved well-being. Another possible mechanism has to do with comparison. Objects are really easy to compare. That 2023 BMW is nicer than my 2013 Mazda. That 3-story mansion is nicer than that shoebox apartment. That Prada dress is nicer than that Old Navy dress. Experiences are harder to compare, however. How does a day at the zoo compare to a day at the beach? How does a trip to Mexico City compare to a trip to Egypt? Since comparisons tend to make us miserable, this is another attractive feature of experiences. A final possible mechanism is that experiences endure in your life more than things, despite the fact that they're only temporary. This is because once an experience ends, you're left with a really salient memory. That memory becomes a story that you can tell to yourself and others about that experience and its impact on you. This is unlike things, which do not lend themselves nearly as well to memories or stories. So the takeaway from this section is simple. Don't expect more, better things to meaningfully boost your well-being. Instead, invest in experiences, which evidence suggests provides a bigger benefit. The problem with this advice is that the line between a thing and an experience is not always clear. Let's consider a book. A book is definitely a thing, but it seems like more of an experience since you read the book. That's the experience that buying the book allows, even though the book is an object. Is the same thing true for a car? You buy a car, but the experience is driving it, right? Or is it having the car in your driveway and getting to look at it? Or is it having to bring the car to the garage for maintenance? What about a soccer ball? Or a board game? Or a Lego set? Or bread? Bread is definitely not a static object, since you eat it. Does that make it an experience? Trust me, if you think about bread long enough, you start to question what the hell it even is. To actually make changes in your life about how you spend your money, you'll have to consider these things. And sometimes things do blur the line. A book feels like a pretty clear experience. Reading it is a short-lived, changing experience. You definitely don't get used to it. It's true that a car involves both the vehicle and the act of driving it. The vehicle half is definitely a thing. The driving half is tough, but note that it is routine. You do it every day, making it a more persistent, static part of your life. So even though driving is an experience, in practice it acts more like a thing. And going to the mechanic is definitely an experience, but probably a negative one. If it's your first soccer ball, it's a lot like an experience. It allows you to play soccer. But what about if it's your fifth soccer ball? Then it's more of a thing. It might be a fun, shiny new toy for a moment, but it isn't really introducing something new to your life. It's just displacing another ball you own, and will soon also be scuffed up and dirty. The main principle at play here is that if it's novel, fleeting, or dynamic, it's more likely to behave like an experience. If it's a routine, static presence in your life, it's more likely to behave like an object. Note that this means that even something that is otherwise an experience, like going out for a walk, can start to resemble a thing if it becomes too routine. If you take the same walk around the same block at the same time every single day, it's going to lose a lot of what otherwise makes an experience, and your well-being may not receive that same boost. We adapt to everything, daily walks included. Oh, and when it comes to bread, my brain is genuinely broken. I think it's an experience if you use it to make a variety of meals that keep your taste buds guessing. If you use it to make the same peanut butter sandwich every day, it feels more like a thing. You should probably eat bread regardless, though. It's a good way to stay fed, and not starving is a good start to cultivating well-being. There are other uses for money worth touching on beyond just things and experiences. One good use is buying time. The time that we have outside work can quickly be consumed by the other obligations in our life: cooking, errands, childcare, housework. What spare time we have collides with an increasingly fast-paced, overstimulated world. We have constant access to devices that can offer instant communication and virtually infinite knowledge, not to mention a world of endless, mostly useless, yet sometimes entertaining content. As a result, research suggests that globally, people feel increasingly pressed for time. There's a newly coined term called time affluence, which is the sense that you have sufficient time in your life for rest and leisure. It turns out that feeling that you have time is a determinant of well-being, and that your well-being suffers without it. Thankfully, if done right, money can help with this. What does this look like in practice? It can take a lot of forms. It could mean spending a little extra money to take a taxi, which gets you home sooner than the bus, or choosing an apartment that is closer to work to reduce your daily commute, or hiring a service to help with some chore you really dislike, like cleaning or shopping for groceries. Anything to give you a little more time back for yourself. One study from 2017 put this to the test, running a field experiment where they prompted people to spend money on either a time-saving purchase or a material good. The finding was that people who spent the same amount of money on a time-saving purchase had higher experienced well-being, another reason to forego buying another thing. Of course, it depends what you do with this extra time. Using it to scroll on social media is not worth a whole lot. Using it to connect with family or exercise or catch up on sleep is a much better use. Another good use is spending money on others, which is also called pro-social spending. This can take two forms: buying gifts for others and making charitable donations. A 2008 experimental study gave participants money, with a catch. Participants were then randomly assigned to either spend that money on themselves or another person, including charity. The researchers recorded their experienced well-being later that day after having spent the money, which revealed that spending the money on others brought them significantly greater well-being. A 2022 meta-analysis of 15 such studies looking at pro-social spending found a similar benefit, particularly when the giver was able to understand how their money made a difference. This finding hits on a repeat theme, which is that when we focus spending on ourselves, it tends to do less for our well-being than if we use it to help someone else or to experience something with another person. There ends our tour of how to spend money well. To summarize, it's really tempting to blow through money quickly on things that don't actually boost your well-being much. Those new shoes, fancy car, and shiny necklace look great in the ads and in the showroom, but they provide diminishing returns and you adjust to them quickly. Worse, they stick around in your life as they wear out. It's hard to internalize this against a backdrop of consumerism and massive marketing budgets, but it's an impulse worth fighting. In its place, research suggests spending money in places that maximize its impact on our well-being, on experiences, on time affluence, and on those around us. Next episode, we'll be discussing how money fits into a good life, covering everything from merit to morals. Stay tuned. Hi there, this is Henry, the founder of Sycamore. At Sycamore, we are out to help people better understand, manage, and practice well-being. If you've enjoyed this series so far, please consider sharing it with a friend, and visit us at trysycamore.com to learn more. Thanks again.